You actually believed that? It was just a prank. Look at yourself in the mirror. The cold, heartless words appeared on her phone screen like a knife plunging into Emily's heart, which was still beating wildly with hope. Just moments before, her world had been a gentle shade of pink from her first date. Now, it had shattered into sharp, painful pieces right in the middle of a noisy, unfamiliar local coffee shop. The rain began to fall outside the coffee shop window. It wasn't a sudden downpour, but a persistent, fine mist, just enough to blur everything. The tiny droplets slid down the glass, drawing long, winding streaks that made the bustling bus station outside look as hazy as Emily's eyes were becoming with tears. She had been sitting there for nearly an hour, at a small wooden table pressed against the window. The black coffee in front of her, the cheapest item on the menu, had long since gone cold. Its bitter taste still lingered on her tongue, but it was nothing compared to the bitterness that was now a lump in her throat. She was wearing a cream-colored sweater, the most beautiful and expensive item of clothing she owned. It was soft and warm, and she had earned it by spending 2 full weekends hunched over at a laundromat, breathing in the musty, chemical-laden air. She had spent the entire morning in front of the mirror, using an old curling iron to create a few gentle waves in her hair. She had carefully dabbed a little bit of lipstick on her lips, an earthy pink shade she only dared to use on special occasions. All of this was just to hide the exhaustion of a final-year student, constantly juggling classes and 3 different part-time jobs. She had saved every single penny. She skipped hot lunches with friends to eat dry bread instead. She turned down weekend movie nights. All of it was just to afford this one date. A date with Leo. Leo. The name sounded so grand, so romantic. A boy with a smile as bright as the sun and messages as sweet as honey. He said he liked her writing, the depth in her simple thoughts. He told her he was tired of girls who only cared about makeup and designer brands. He wanted to meet someone with a soul. And she, Emily, a girl whose world was confined to books and grueling work shifts, had believed him. She had naively believed that, perhaps, she had finally found someone who could see past her simple, somewhat worn exterior to the real person inside. Her fingers traced aimless circles on the tabletop. Her eyes were glued to the door, her heart contracting with a jolt of hope every time the small wind chimes hanging on the door rang out a clear, tinkling sound. A beat of hope, followed by a beat of sinking disappointment. Nearly an hour that felt like a century, gnawing away at her patience and fragile self-respect. Then her phone vibrated. A gentle buzz on the table, but it was like a thunderclap in her heart. It was Leo. A final, faint flicker of hope, but enough to make her hold her breath. Maybe he was stuck in traffic. Maybe something unexpected came up, and he forgot to let her know. She quickly snatched up her phone, a smile ready to bloom on her lips to mask the awkwardness of waiting. But that smile froze when she read the first few words. You actually believed that? It was just a prank. Look at yourself in the mirror. Emily was stunned. Her hands trembled violently, and the phone nearly slipped from her grasp. Her ears rang. The noisy chatter of the cafe, the whir of the coffee grinder, the gentle music, everything seemed to retreat, dissolving into a frightening silence. The only sound was her own heart pounding in her chest, so loudly she was afraid the person at the next table could hear it. She read the message over and over, her eyes fixed on the screen, as if reading it one more time could somehow change the cruel words. But it didn't. They remained, cold and brutal. The blood rushed to her face, burning hot. A wave of shame and humiliation washed over her. She felt like everyone in the cafe was looking at her, laughing at her stupidity. She quickly opened her small wallet, which contained only a few crumpled bills and some loose coins. She felt pathetic, worthless. She bit down hard on her lower lip, trying to use the physical pain to overpower the pain in her heart. The salty taste of tears started to spread in her mouth. No, she couldn't cry here. Absolutely not. At a table not far away, Daniel was patiently feeding small pieces of cake to his son. Alex, a 6-year-old boy with eyes as round as marbles, suddenly stopped chewing and innocently pointed at Emily. "Dad, why is that lady crying?" Daniel looked up. He had noticed the young woman sitting alone ever since he walked in. He had seen her restlessness, her hope, and the growing disappointment in her eyes every time the cafe door opened. Then he saw the moment she looked at her phone, how her shoulders trembled and how her face went pale. As someone who had experienced a broken heart, he recognized that pain. Not a loud, screaming pain, but a quiet, internal collapse. His eyes filled with deep sympathy and a touch of sorrow. Emily bowed her head, hurriedly stuffed the phone into her pocket, and just wanted to disappear from this place immediately. She stood up, trying to walk quickly, but her feet felt like they were made of lead. Every step was an act of humiliation. "Ma'am," a gentle voice from the counter called out. "Someone bought this for you." Emily looked back, confused. She hadn't ordered anything else. The server smiled and placed a steaming cup of hot milk in her hand. Its warmth spread through her freezing hands, a surprisingly soothing sensation. Tucked under the cup was a napkin folded into a small square. Curious, she hesitantly unfolded it. Written on the white napkin was a handwritten note, not perfectly neat but strong and steady. "Your worth isn't determined by someone who can't see it. Drink this to warm up." Emily looked up sharply, her tear-filled eyes scanning the room, but all she saw was the back of a tall man holding the hand of a little boy, disappearing behind the glass door, now blurred by rain. She stood there, stunned in the middle of the cafe, hugging the hot cup of milk. Its warmth didn't just feel good in her hands, it seemed to seep deep into her heart, soothing the coldness and the bleeding wound. The tears she had tried to hold back with all her might finally couldn't be stopped. They rolled down her cheeks, hot, but this time it wasn't from shame or pain. It was from an unexpected kindness, from a complete stranger. That small act, on a gloomy, rainy afternoon, couldn't erase the scar, but it stopped her from sinking into despair. It was like a tiny, fragile but resilient seedling, reminding her that even in this big, sometimes cruel world, kindness still existed. Emily's life, like the bus she took every day, returned to its familiar and somewhat monotonous route. The lecture hall, the library, and the exhausting shifts at the laundromat. She buried the memory of that rainy afternoon deep in her heart, viewing it as a costly lesson, a scar to remind herself never to be so naive again. The hot milk was long gone, but the napkin with the neat handwriting was carefully kept in a small tin box with her few cherished mementos. Sometimes, when she felt too tired, she would take it out and look at it, and the strange warmth from those words would spread through her, giving her the strength to keep going. A few weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon, Emily was walking home from the market. She was carrying 2 bulky bags, one with vegetables and the other full of oranges and apples she had bought for her dorm mates. As she tried to navigate through the crowded bus station, where the air was thick with exhaust fumes and people's hurried calls, the thin plastic handle of her bag suddenly ripped with a rip sound. All the oranges and apples spilled out, rolling across the dirty grey ground. "Oh no," Emily gasped quietly. Her face flushed with embarrassment as she quickly crouched down, fumbling to pick up each piece of fruit. People hurried past, some glancing at her with pity before continuing on their way. Just then, a pair of grey sneakers stopped right in front of her. A large, steady hand began to help her pick up the oranges that had rolled away. "Let me lend you a hand," a warm, familiar voice said. Emily looked up and her heart skipped a beat. It was the man from the coffee shop, Daniel, and next to him, little Alex was looking at her with his big, curious eyes. "Hello, ma'am," Alex said politely. "Hi," Emily replied, a little flustered. Daniel didn't say much. He just quietly picked up all the fruit, brushed off the dirt, and carefully placed them in Emily's other bag. When he was done, before Emily could even thank him, Alex scurried over. He opened his tiny palm, revealing a lollipop still in its wrapper. He pressed it into Emily's hand, This is for you. Candy makes the sadness go away. Emily froze for a moment, then she laughed. A real, unforced laugh, the first in days. Daniel smiled too, a gentle smile that brightened his somewhat weary face. "That's my son," he said. "He probably thinks candy can fix anything, even a ripped bag." "Thank you." "And you too," Emily said, looking at the lollipop in her palm. They didn't mention the coffee shop, but a comfortable awkwardness and an unspoken connection had formed between them. Their second encounter was even more coincidental. One Wednesday evening, it was pouring rain. The sudden downpour caught everyone by surprise. Emily had just finished her shift at a fast food restaurant, and her thin jacket was soaked. She stood shivering under the narrow awning of a bus stop, shaking from the cold. The last bus was delayed, and the street was getting emptier. Suddenly, a familiar car slowly pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and it was Daniel. "Emily, get in. You'll be waiting forever in this rain. I'm going in your direction." Emily hesitated. "But I'll be a bother." "Not at all. Alex is waiting at home. Get in. You'll catch a cold." The genuine concern in his voice convinced her. She opened the car door and sat in the passenger seat. The warm, dry space inside made her sigh with relief. In the back seat, a child's car seat was neatly placed. Alex wasn't there, but Emily could imagine him squirming around in it. "Alex is usually asleep by now," Daniel said, as if reading her mind. "I had to meet a client today, so I dropped him off at his grandmother's house." Soft music played from the old radio. They didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. Daniel just asked her what she was studying and if it was difficult. She told him about her classes and her dream of becoming a writer. He listened attentively, occasionally nodding. They started seeing each other more often, not by pre-arrangement, but because the bus station seemed to have become a casual meeting point for their two ordinary lives. Some days, they would just nod in greeting as they passed by. Other times, if they were waiting for the same bus, they would sit together on the bench, sharing small talk about work, a good book, or Alex's mischief. Daniel never asked about her past or why she was crying at the coffee shop, and she wasn't curious about his private life. They were simply friends, sharing everyday moments, like two people on the same path, offering each other a little bit of warmth. The real turning point in their relationship came on a late weekend afternoon. Emily had just finished her part-time job and was completely exhausted. She sat on the bench, watching the hurried crowds, feeling drained and lonely. Daniel and Alex sat down next to her after a trip to the bookstore. Alex was hugging a brand new comic book, while Daniel was telling her about an interesting architectural project downtown. Alex, probably tired from a day of playing, slowly leaned his head on Emily's shoulder and fell asleep. Emily's whole body stiffened. She could feel the boy's steady breath on her neck, warm and trusting. His head felt so comfortable and heavy on her shoulder. She had never felt such an innocent closeness or such absolute trust. She unconsciously smiled, gently stroking his soft hair. Daniel stopped talking. He was silent, his eyes looking at his son, then at her, and they became unusually tender. He spoke softly, in a whisper, as if to not wake up the entire world. "He really likes you." They sat there in a comfortable silence, with only the noise of the surrounding traffic as a backdrop. A man, a woman, and a sleeping child. There were no promises, no commitments, just a deep sense of peace that both of them had been searching for a long time. In that moment, the invisible barrier between strangers was completely broken. For Daniel, it was the first time since his wife passed away that he had seen his son sleep so soundly and peacefully next to another woman. He saw a picture of a family he thought he had lost forever. For Emily, it was the feeling of being protected, trusted, and needed, a feeling she had never experienced. Their relationship, in a natural and gentle way, officially crossed the threshold from a casual acquaintance to a genuine bond. The months that followed passed in a sweet serenity. The bus station was no longer a tiresome place of transit between work shifts. It had become an unspoken meeting point. Their chance encounters gradually became more intentional. Sometimes, Emily would purposely linger after class, hoping to catch a glimpse of the familiar father-son duo. Sometimes, Daniel would happen to be passing by the bus station at her dismissal time, with the excuse that Alex wanted ice cream at a nearby store. They never gave a name to their relationship. It wasn't a passionate love, nor was it a simple friendship. It was something in between, a gentle and patient bond, like a seedling quietly growing on its own, not needing anyone to tend to it, just the presence of the other. One early autumn morning, as the leaves began to turn yellow, an email changed everything. Emily was sitting in the library, the clicks of her mouse echoing in the quiet space. She opened her inbox, and the bold subject line made her heart stop. Congratulations, full scholarship for student exchange program at Avalon University. Her hand, holding the mouse, trembled. She held her breath, reading and rereading every word, afraid she was mistaken. But no, it was real. The dream she had nurtured since her first days of university, the dream of a year studying in an international environment and being exposed to great literature, had finally come true. A wave of overwhelming joy surged in her chest, so powerful she had to cover her mouth to keep from shouting in the library. The first person she wanted to tell wasn't her roommates or her family back home. It was Daniel. That evening, they walked along the riverbank again. The river flowed lazily, reflecting the city's faint golden lights. The chill of the early autumn evening made Emily shiver slightly, but her heart felt unusually warm. She chatted excitedly to Daniel about the letter, the university, and her plans. Her face was radiant, her eyes sparkling with happiness and pride. Daniel listened, not missing a single word. He smiled genuinely, a sincere smile, without a hint of doubt. Congratulations, Emily. I knew you could do it. You deserve this, more than anyone. His validation seemed to double her joy. But then, as the initial excitement faded, a vague anxiety began to creep into her mind, like the evening mist, slowly descending. 1 year, 365 days, a very long time. Her voice grew softer, the elation in her eyes slowly dimming. But a year is a long time, isn't it? Daniel noticed the change in her tone. He was silent, waiting for her to continue. I'm afraid, she confessed, her voice a near whisper, her eyes fixed on her shoes. I'm afraid that when I come back, things won't be the same. The bus station, the afternoons. I'm afraid you and Alex will forget me. That fear, the fear of someone who had once been abandoned, the fear of someone who had just found a peaceful haven and was now about to leave it, was laid bare and vulnerable. Daniel stopped walking. He didn't answer immediately. He looked at the river lazily flowing in the darkness, as if searching for the right words. Then he turned and looked directly into Emily's eyes. His gaze held no pity, only deep understanding and a firm belief. Emily, he said, his voice steady and warm, dispelling the autumn chill. I understand what you're worried about. He paused for a moment, then continued, each word clear and strong, but try to look at it this way. See this as a test, not for you, but for everything you're leaving behind. If a bond is strong enough, a year will only make it deeper, not fade. He smiled gently, a smile full of encouragement. Fly, Emily. Your wings are strong enough now. Fly to where you belong. Alex and I will be here, on the ground, cheering you on. Daniel's words were like a cool, refreshing stream, washing away all her fears and insecurities. It wasn't an empty promise. It was unconditional support, the quiet sacrifice of someone who truly cared more about her future than his own loneliness. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but they were tears of deep emotion and gratitude. She realized that what she had found in this man was more than just a peaceful place. It was a home. On the day Emily left for the airport, Daniel and Alex came to see her off. The airport was noisy and bustling, people rushing everywhere. But in that moment, Emily's world shrank to just the three of them. Alex didn't cry. He just seriously put a clumsy, multicolored yarn bracelet on Emily's wrist. "So you won't forget us," the little boy said, his voice sounding very grown-up. Emily laughed, hugging him tight, inhaling the sweet, milky, and sun-warmed scent of his hair. "I won't forget, I promise." She stood up and faced Daniel. Amidst the loud flight announcements, they didn't need to say much. He just looked at her with a gentle nod and a smile that held pride, trust, and an unspoken promise. "Take care," he said. "You and Alex too," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. Daniel's words that day became the biggest turning point. It wasn't just encouragement, it was a validation of a sincere, selfless affection. It gave Emily the freedom to spread her wings and pursue her dreams without carrying any burden of guilt. And most importantly, it cemented her faith in this relationship, in this man, more than ever before. She knew that no matter how far she flew, there would always be a place for her to return. 1 year. It sounds long, but when you fill it with captivating lectures, all-nighters in the library, weekend adventures to quaint old towns, and video calls full of laughter with Alex and Daniel, it passed surprisingly quickly. The Emily who returned was no longer the timid final-year student who always hugged the walls. The trip had given her not only knowledge but also confidence. She had learned to voice her opinions, to smile at strangers, and to solve difficult problems on her own. Her posture was straighter, her shoulders were broader, and a gentle smile seemed to be a permanent fixture on her face. As the bus rolled into the familiar station, her heart pounded in her chest. The smell of exhaust fumes, the calls of street vendors, the blare of car horn sounds that once made her tired, now felt strangely comforting. She stepped off the bus, pulling her suitcase, her eyes eagerly scanning the bustling crowd. And then she saw them. Amidst the noisy crowd, they stood out like a beacon of peace. Daniel, still with that calm demeanor, was wearing a simple shirt, his hair neatly cut. But his eyes, when he saw her, were not calm at all. They sparkled with undisguised joy. And beside him, Alex, now a little taller, was holding up a cardboard sign scrawled with crayons. On it were large, crooked but loving words, "Welcome home, Emily." Next to it was a drawing of 3 people holding hands and a big grinning sundae. A lump of warm emotion rose in Emily's throat. She let go of her suitcase handle and ran to them, not saying a word, wrapping her arms around both father and son. The hug was tight, as if to make up for the entire year apart, as if to make sure this wasn't a dream. "You're back." Alex cheered happily, his little arms squeezing her waist. Daniel just quietly put his arm around her shoulder and patted her gently, a pat that said 1,000 words. "Welcome home, safe and sound." But right at that perfect and happy moment, a voice from behind them rang out, a voice so familiar it made her skin crawl. "Emily?" She froze, the smile on her lips hardening. She slowly turned around. "Leo." He stood there, just a few steps away. He was wearing a stylish suit, his hair slicked back, holding a bouquet of red roses. He looked completely different from her memory, more mature and seemingly remorseful. "I was wrong, Emily." Leo stepped forward, his voice a little pleading, his eyes looking at her with a complex expression. "I saw you on the university news. You've become an amazing person. I know what I did was unforgivable. I was a jerk, but please, can you give me another chance? We can start over." The entire bus station seemed to stand still. The noise seemed to vanish. All curious eyes turned to them. Emily's world seemed to split into 2 halves. One half was Leo, the past, the memory of the cold coffee, the cruel messages, the suffocating feeling of humiliation. The bouquet of roses in his hand, though vibrant, now looked fake to her, like a carefully calculated tool for atonement. The other half was Daniel, the present, the peace, the memory of the hot milk, the casual encounters, Alex's clumsy yarn bracelet, and the trusting look in his eyes. She glanced at Daniel. He didn't step forward to protect her, nor did he back away uncomfortably. He just stood there, quietly, his eyes without a hint of jealousy, not a trace of worry or judgment. Only trust. Absolute trust that she was strong enough to face her past on her own. That look gave Emily the answer. She took a deep breath, turned to face Leo completely, and smiled, a calm and unexpectedly decisive smile. That coffee was cold, just like my heart, but the hot milk afterward taught me that true warmth doesn't come from loud promises, but from quiet actions. She looked him straight in the eye, her voice clear and strong, without a single tremor. You didn't come back because you regret it. You came back because you saw that what you threw away suddenly became valuable. But I am not an object for you to put a price on. She paused for a second, letting her words sink into the air. I don't need someone who comes back only when they feel a loss. I choose someone who never left. That statement was the climax of her entire journey of growth. It was not just a rejection, it was a declaration. She was no longer the weak girl who was easily hurt by others' words. She had decisively turned her back on the past and was confidently stepping toward the wide-open future that awaited her. Emily's words rang out, clear and firm, amidst the bus station's noise. It wasn't an angry accusation or a sorrowful complaint. It was simply the truth, spoken with a healed heart and a soul that had found peace. Leo was stunned. The remorseful smile on his lips froze and then disappeared, leaving him looking bewildered and shocked. The bright red roses in his hand suddenly felt heavy and out of place. The vibrant petals seemed to lose their pride, bowing to her decisive choice. He opened his mouth to say something, but then stopped. All his words, all his preparation, all his plans to win her back now seemed meaningless. Emily didn't wait for his reaction. She didn't care anymore. She just gave a slight, polite, but distant nod and turned away. A definitive turn, leaving her entire past, her hurts, and her illusions behind her. She walked straight toward Daniel and Alex. Her steps were light and serene. Every step was a declaration. As she got closer, the vague worry on Daniel's face melted away, replaced by a relieved and warm smile. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, his arms open naturally. "You were so good," Alex cheered, breaking the silence. He dropped the sign on the ground, ran over, and took Emily's hand, squeezing it tight. His small, warm hand was like a connecting thread, pulling her completely back to the present, to where she belonged. Emily smiled, squeezing Alex's hand back. Then she looked into Daniel's eyes. No need for a confession of love, no need for a passionate kiss or vows. Everything they needed to say to each other was expressed through their eyes, a look of understanding, of trust, and of a love built on the most ordinary things. Daniel gently reached out his other hand and took hers. 3 hands, one large, one medium, and one small, intertwined perfectly, a circle of connection. They left the bus station together. The 3 of them, hand in hand, walked away. They passed Leo, who was still standing there like a statue, but none of them looked back. They walked past the noisy stalls, through the hurried crowds, toward the gentle golden light of the setting Sunday. There were no fireworks, no loud promises, just the image of a small family walking together, their shadows stretched long on the ground, blending into one. Occasionally, Alex would skip, pulling on the hands of both adults, and his clear laughter would ring out, blending with the city's bustling rhythm. As they walked, a voice echoed in Emily's mind, clear and peaceful, like a summary of the long journey she had completed and the start of a new one ahead. People often look for love in loud promises and vibrant bouquets, but I found it at an old bus station, in a cup of hot milk, and in a persistent, unspoken presence. True love is not an apology. It is a promise to never have to say you're sorry. The moment the 3 of them walked away together wasn't a shocking event. It was as gentle as a breath, but it was the final turning point, the ultimate validation. The story of an individual's pain and loneliness had officially ended, and the story of a family's happiness, a family built on patience, kindness, and quiet care, had just begun. The sunset embraced them, warm and gentle, like a blessing for a new beginning, a peaceful home.